this book here has keys, it has hob sheets for billing and such, and it also has a card if you guys need to refill at any gas pump or wherever. If we're on the field here, we use MoGas, car gas, premium 91. It says right here the accepted fuel grades. So the engine likes the MoGas better than the avgas. It tends to perform much better. It doesn't get as much carbon buildup, and it just doesn't get as clogged. So it prefers to have the MoGas. However, it performs well with the avgas as well. It just requires more maintenance essentially. So tossing in avgas is no big deal. You can find that at any airport that has a fuel pump. So wherever you guys are stopping, just make sure it has avgas and you guys can fill it up with avgas. Almost 20 gallons on each side, which is great. The only drawback of it being light sport is we're limited on that the weight. So likely with 2 people, although you're a little bit of a lighter person, you won't be able to fill it full tanks and be under that 1320. So just be aware of that. Filling it up full and tossing a bunch of baggage in and hopping in will get you over top of that weight. You guys can see that when you practice the weight balance. So just be aware of that. As it says here, don't just leave this sitting in the sun for too long. It heats up because it's black and then the fuel card bends. So just be aware of that. Hopping up, there's a step here, handle. Quick note about hopping up, you guys can't board at the same time. It has a weight to CG ratio a little bit far back, so it tends to tip back if you both are loading at the same time. So just be aware of that. Keys, round key is for the canopy. This little square key is the master key. There's a screwdriver on here, and then this is for the fuel tank, the larger square. Okay. We try to leave the canopy locked just for, security, but we leave the brakes off usually and just do tie downs. If you're in a place that doesn't have tie downs, then put the brakes on. Try to use this as well if you're going to leave the aircraft for a while. It protects the avionics screens, keeps them nice and new. We usually secure the stick with the seatbelt here, if you can see that. You basically just pull the stick back and then wrap the seatbelt. That secures the flight control so that wind doesn't flap them around and stuff. So when we're pre-flighting, it's a good idea to release that guy. In here, there's a checklist. This checklist has normal procedures, abnormal procedures, and emergency procedures in it, so everything's included in this one checklist. If one of you guys want to follow along, there's the pre-flight checklist there. The first thing I like to do is go ahead and turn the power on, and we'll need the EFIS backup. EFIS controls these screens. So the EFIS backup is on a separate circuit than these other ones. So your EFIS 1 and 2 will control turning on these screens, and then the EFIS backup is kind of like an extra just in case something fails in that circuit. On this screen is everything that we need to know. Down here has the fuel. So it says we have about 8 and 7. 8 on this side, 7 on that side. Whenever I note which one has higher fuel, I just select that tank. The fuel selector is one or the other. It doesn't siphon from both, so it's very important to be aware of which tank we're using and which tank has more fuel. Additionally, we're going to switch the fuel tanks every hour, and then I also switch the fuel tanks before takeoff, every time I take off. Right, every time I take off, I say, okay, fullest tank, so select fullest tank. Okay? So that's important for this specific aircraft. Flap control is these buttons here, these green buttons. Top is up, 1 notch, 2 notch, and down. So watch yourself here. I'm going to put the flaps down. It's all electronically controlled, so we don't have a manual control of the flaps. If they do fail, then we have to land without flaps, which we'll go over. Additionally, while I'm in here, I go ahead and I turn all the lights on. these bottom landing light, taxi light, strobe, and nav. After all that stuff is on and I've checked my fuel, I turn the EFIS backup off because I don't need that anymore. And then I disembark the aircraft. Now I do a walk around and check lights. There's strobe. There's strobe and nav. Landing taxi. And then nav strobe here. So just double checking all my lights work, especially if you guys are going to be flying at night. It's important to have the lights working. While I'm doing the light walk around, I also do an overall visually check of the airplane. So I do, is the airplane overall in good shape? Is it tilting? Is a wing pulled back? Did somebody run into it overnight? You know, just an overall check to make sure that everything's okay. And I also check myself in mentally that I'm flying an airplane now and I'm not dealing with any of the outside world anymore. So I make my last phone call, my last text here before I do it. Alright, when I hop back up the second time, everything goes off. If I'm going to be extended periods away from the aircraft, I want all my switches off. I don't want to drain the battery. In the center console, there's a fuel cup and sometimes a screwdriver, but there's also a screwdriver on this key set, so we don't need a screwdriver. So I make sure I grab all this. You'll need the key, screwdriver, and fuel cup for the rest of the pre-flight. So we hop down here. We're going to check the main gear and brake line. So the brake line is that red line on the back of the main landing gear. And then this is the main wheel. You just look underneath to see if the pant is secured and then also if there's any bald spots. It's a little hard with the pants to see bald spots, but you'll see if the tire is worn. It will be noticeable, it'll be missing a line. And in fact, you can see here on the right side of this left tire, there's a missing line on the right side, which means we have a bald spot on there. Okay? Then we do the flaps. There's a control rod in here for the flaps. That controls the flaps extending and retracting. Electronic, of course. If you want to reach your hand in there and check free looseness, you can. So make sure it can rotate. Underneath, there are 3 attachment points. They're hard to see, so you have to get literally underneath the flap. What I like to do is I just reach my hand under and just double check that the through bolt and nut are secure. So I just reach my hand under and come across. And I check all 3 attachment points. Aileron also controlled by a rod with an inspection port here. When you're inspecting this, hold down the aileron and then check the freeness here of the rod. Okay? Underside of aileron's a little bit easier to see. Same through bolt and hinge here, and then the last through bolt for the aileron is over here. We're checking here that the wingtip is all good. Light is secure. Leading edge fairings are secure. Lights are all secure here. Tie down can come off, and then from this side you can also check those hinges visually. So I do a field check when I'm on that side and then a visual check when I'm on this side. All right? Additionally, over here we have the fuel vent. Pitot tube, openings are clear and secure. And then we do a fuel check. I always visually check fuel. You guys can see in here, you can barely see fuel, so it's just now moving up, right? So it's just at that point where you wouldn't be able to see it. If I cannot see fuel in both tanks, I do not fly. Okay, so one tank I should be able to see fuel. So visually I see some fuel here. That means we have about 6-7 gallons at that point. If you can't see fuel, you're down below 5 gallons. That's getting to the point where I probably shouldn't be flying. Just drop there. Here's our fuel sump. You can get a sample of fuel here. looks clean, no water. Water will sink to the bottom. The fuel is lighter. So if you see some sort of defined line or bubbles or something weird, then there's water in there. No water, no dirt here. If it's clean, and this is car gas, it's clear, right? So you'll either see clear gas here or you'll see blue, the light blue avgas that you're used to. If it's clean and the correct type of fuel, you can go ahead and pour the fuel back in the tank. That's okay. If it's not clear and there's dirt or water or something, then pour it out. Don't pour it back in the tank. We just took it out, right? On this side, we check pilot side vent. So this goes into the cabin and allows air to flow through. Here also there's an outside air temp probe. So just double check that probe is in there and secure. On the cowl, you can check that these screws are vertically oriented. So all the screws running vertically are vertical, and all the screws running horizontally are horizontal, all right? You can also check the parachute housing cover here. This is the left side parachute housing. And then we're gonna check inside the cowl here. These Zeus fasteners, if they're vertical, they're loose. If they're horizontal, they're tight. And then obviously these are the opposite, right? Vertical tight, horizontal loose. It's only a quarter turn to secure or release them. On this side, we have all of our electronics. So this is fuse box and a voltage regulator here and all sorts of different wiring. What we're checking here is there aren't any broken, burned, frayed, stuff that looks bad with the wiring. So we care about the wiring mostly on this side. We also check down near the exhaust. You can see there's some wetness there because there was recently a leak. So we're checking there to see if there's a new leak that we're not aware of, right? So if it had previously been dry and is now wet, then you know there's a leak somewhere and tends to pool right there. Okay. So yeah, mostly electronics on this side. That can be closed and secured. Okay. Coming around to the front, check prop condition. As you can see here, there is some paint chipping, but this has not chipped the metal or cracked the metal yet. If we see cracks in the metal or chips in the metal, then we have a problem and we probably shouldn't fly. But all the way back here, you can see this is an old prop. The paint is chipped and scratched and all sorts of stuff. Structurally, that's okay, it's just paint, right? But if we have some sort of structural deficiency here with a crack or a chip, then we would need to reevaluate. Spinner condition, it's secure and it's on. It's all good there. As we come down, we check these vents to see that there's nothing clogging them. Oil cooler and water cooler, separate coolers, so these are radiators for them. We check that nothing's broken in the radiator, nothing's clogged. While we're down here, we'll go ahead and we'll check the strut. So we'll check the suspension by just pulling down and seeing that it moves freely, but not free in a clunking, right? So we don't want it to clunk up and down. It should have some spring to it, but it shouldn't be too tough or hard. From here, we can also check the pants for screws to see if there's any screws missing. Looks like they're okay. Check this pant as well to see if there's screws. Remove the nose chuck. And then while I'm here, I also look for any puddles, right? If there's some sort of leak, it would have created a puddle. Over here, we check this opening goes directly into the engine. This is the actual intake for the engine, so we're checking that that's clear. We can also check this compartment. This compartment has all our fluids, all right? So we have coolant fluid, which looks low, right? It's at the minimum here. So that we would have to address by adding some coolant. It's at the minimum, so it's okay to fly right now, but if it gets any lower, it's probably what the leak is a coolant leak. Here's the brake fluid. All we have to see for the brake fluid is that there's visible fluid. Okay, so it can be all the way down to the bottom. As long as there's fluid in there, it's serviceable and flyable. With the coolant, there's a minimum line. So if below the minimum, you need to add fluid. This is a dry sump system, which means we have a separate tank. It's not an oil pan. There's a separate tank for the oil. And basically what we're looking for is that there's oil on this flat portion. So as you can see right now, there's no oil on the flat portion. So if there's no oil on the flat portion, then we need to burp the engine. Okay? Basically in dry sump systems, the oil sometimes will sit in the engine after a flight and won't drain into the tank. So to drain the oil into the tank, first I double check that there's nothing on, because if we crank the prop with some kind of electronics activated, then we can prop start the engine. So everything's off, all switches are down. And then we turn the propeller in the motion that it likes to turn, so you can see that it likes to turn this way. And essentially you just crank this propeller like so. What this is doing is it's turning the crankshaft inside and turning the engine, turning the pistons actually, and that's allowing the oil to drain out back into the tank. So you don't have to do this all the way to burp. Usually just a few turns will allow enough oil for you to see that there's enough oil in it. I'll turn this all the way to burp so you guys can hear it. Basically, if you stand over on this side, you'll be able to hear that the air comes through and it actually sounds like it's gurgling. So it hasn't done it yet, but if you just hang out over there, you'll hear it. I'll do it in a second. You can hear it sucking air. Right? So that's how you know that all the oil has drained. It does that burping. Usually you don't have to go all the way to burp. Oh look, the screw doesn't loose. And you can see now it's far up on the flat part, right? So we have plenty of oil. Make sure that this guy's in. Another thing you can check on this side, if you guys look in here, there's some orange stripes. Those orange stripes are torque stripes for the throttle, okay? So if those are broken, that means the throttle cable is loose, right? The screws have become loose, it's broken those torque stripes, and then you're gonna have an issue with the throttle cable, right? And the throttle cable is this guy right here. That whole throttle assembly. Basically how this works is air comes into this little air box here that has a filter inside, and then throttle will open or close that air source and then allow more air into the system, and then the fuel injectors spray some fuel in there, and that's how it mixes in the cylinder. And this is an oil filter here. Okay? Well, those are good. Check this vent as well. This is the passenger side vent. And then parachute housing cover on this side, right? You can see here, stay clear, rocket deployed parachute, right? Right side of the aircraft, same thing, opposite, right? You start with fuel. Take a look at our fuel, looks good. While we're down here, I also check that fuel vent, right? No pitot tube on this side, obviously. Do a visually check of our fuel here. On this side, I cannot see fuel, right? See how you can't see fuel? So we're somewhere under 6 gallons, 6.5, something, you know. So I just assume the worst on that and assume that we don't have any gas in that tank. So that's the right tank. That's the left tank. Left tank is selected. That's the fullest tank. So I'm happy with that. Especially if you're gonna do a cross-country flight, like you don't want to be pushing. I'm gonna be pushing fuel, but we'll be up for an hour today, so I'll fuel after the first flight. Okay. Take that guy off. You can use that opportunity to check underneath as well for the other attachment points for the flaps and the ailerons. Security of the light. Check this guy again. Attachment point, and then the 3 on the flap. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Do a fuselage condition check. All fairings look secure, rivets are in place. Radio antenna is secure. Horizontal stabilizer condition is good. Vertical stabilizer condition is good as well. Elevator condition, elevator attachment points, there are 4. It goes through to the other side, so there are 2 bolts on the right, 2 bolts on the left. rudder has 3 attachment points, one on the top. You can visually see it if you like lean yourself over, a middle, and then a bottom. As we come to the bottom, we can look for this attachment point. You'll have to actually get under the aircraft like I am here. And then while I'm here, I also move the elevator to see the rod and attachment point for the elevator through this inspection hole. So the hole has a through bolt as well, and you can see it by moving the elevator, and then you can check the rod condition as well. It's not broken or loose or something's weird about it, right? While I'm down here, I also check the rudder cables. They shouldn't be loose or too tight. You can check rudder play. It's a pretty stiff rudder, so don't be surprised that it takes a little bit to push it around. Other attachment points for the elevator on the left side. On this side, I crouch down and check the cotter pin on the trim tab. We have only trim tab on the one side. And then I also double check to see if it's neutralized, because when we sit in the cockpit, we'll have to neutralize the trim tab. But it looks pretty neutral right now, so we don't have to worry about it when we hop in. While I'm down here, you can also check the bottom condition of the elevator and horizontal stabilizer on both sides. Empennage condition, vertical horizontal stabilizer condition. You can see here there was some kind of repair. And fuselage condition on the left side.